Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Hey Vignesh, how's it going, bro?
Surviving as everyone is, COVID hit times.
Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Before we get started, if you could let everybody who's listening and watching know who you are, what you do, future aspirations, hobbies, likes, dislikes, anything and everything you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead. My name is Vignesh, guys. I'm from Mangalore, Karnataka, which is in India. So I'm a computer science graduate. Currently working as a quality analyst in a IT company, IT firm. Uh, so what else? As a hobby, I'm into music and stuff. Producing, in fact, writing too, actually. So that's my main ambition, going ahead, want to do something big in that platform. But as you know, times have been tough. You just can't sit idle and say, I don't want to take this job up. So just going with the flow as of now. Let's see if it goes.
Mm, for sure, bro. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty in the air, especially because of the way the pandemic is sort of panned out. But things are looking up. Hopefully, things get better soon. For everybody everywhere around the world. But for added context, I'll probably mention this in the introduction as well. But Vignesh and I both met each other through going to the same school in Mangalore, Mount Carmel Central School, or Vignesh was, excuse me, my senior. And yeah, I mean, I just put out, some of you might have seen this already, but I just put out a story asking people who'd be interested to come on, and Vignesh is one of them. So here we are. And I'm glad that we could do this. So thank you so much for coming on, bro.
Me too. It's my pleasure,
Um,
man. It's just, and one more thing
yeah.
I got to talk about Prateek as well. He's this guy. I've seen him right from school, right? So initially high schools how kids are, but this guy was always disciplined. He did it by the book sort of guy. So I've always been, this guy is good. I had good impression of him. So when he put it out, I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So yeah, you know how things just find us back, man. It's 10, 7, 8 years ago. Who would have thought I'd be here, you'd be there? It's just crazy how destiny takes you.
For sure, bro. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You're being kind. Thank you for that. But yeah, yeah. So let's start from, I guess, there. Like, what was life after getting out of school, in terms of, by not in terms of like what necessarily happened, but more so in terms of your outlook on it. Because a lot of the times, as school kids, at least in India, a lot of the times it feels like, oh, you should. I'll say it in Tulu, like for some of you who get it, but I'll also translate it. It's sort of like uh, science detonna, commerce detonna, arts detonna. Like, are you supposed to take science, commerce, or arts? Like, what are you supposed to take? It's like society wants you to do one thing, you want to do another thing. So, what was all of that like for you as soon as you got out of Mount Carmel?
Just like any other Indian kid, like you mentioned, science, commerce, arts, they take first, second, and third place. Science is always the
Yeah,
first preference. Science is basically engineering and doctor. You know how the system in India is. It's been for years.
right.
So same case was with me too. So after doing my engineering, I had absolutely, quite honestly, I had no idea as to what take up. Like all confused kids were. So what happened was a bunch of my friends went to Mahesh PU College. It's a PU college in Mangalore. So I decided to join there too. So took up computer science because computer science is booming. Everybody will like computer science. Uh, that was the trending thing point when I was joined my PU. So I took up computer science. Yeah, just went with the flow. But yeah, I'll have to say to the people who's just watching, who are in high school, never make a decision because some of your friends went, or your aunts told you, or your parents told you, for that matter. To just think about it, take your time, and just explore few options before just diving right in.
Definitely. And let's sort of expand that a little more because, it's something that I guess we are told quite a bit in terms of, um, I don't know if maybe I'm making this up in my head or this memory is just a made up memory. I don't know. But I feel like some teachers might have probably said, don't go somewhere just because your friends are going there and all that sort of stuff. But yet we still do because there is that level of comfort there. So, was that realization something that hit you after you got done, or was it a realization that hit while you were in PU
Well,
college?
in my PU college, as a matter of fact, every student is different. So what happened was, few of my friends really picked up science isn't easy. It isn't anything like in high school. So a few of them picked it up like just like that. It was easy for them, and to me personally, it was quite difficult, and especially it was a very strict PU college. Being very honest. So coming from Mount Carmel, being kids and just being there, I'm not pushed. I was my option. So being there, it was kind of always doubted myself. What did I do the right thing? Was it really necessary to just go with the flow? But then you never give up, right? You just have to do it. Just 2 years of PU. I did it. Somehow managed it. And and there's a quite funny story too how I took up engineering. Let's get back to that in future, coming up ahead. So yeah, that's how my PU went about.
Mm. No, but yeah, we can carry on to that. So yeah, speaking of which, you got out of PU college. What was engineering like for you to take that step where you sort of knew that you, not that you didn't want to do it, but then maybe internally you were sort of questioning the choice that you made. So what was that like? Like making that choice to go ahead and still push on and do engineering, and then sort of this discovery and the funny story and everything. You can expand on it as
Yeah,
much as you want.
so well, I had taken up computer science, so I had no option of going into MBBS. So that was cut out right from the field. So only thing left, being an Indian kid, engineering. Anything, any sort of engineering, any discipline of engineering is fine, but you have to be an engineer. So a funny story is that our computer science exam, the particular subject of my PU, was quite easy. I was actually hoping I'd get out of it, but then I fell short by 2 3 marks. So I thought, oh yeah, computer science is easy. Why not just go take up computer science? Again, it was irrational decision making, but it's quite funny thinking of it now. I took that up and I believe, yeah, this just because I had an easy paper, I expected that the entire computer science would be easy and I'd love it. I didn't really have the ambition to be a computer science engineer. It was just that I got good scores and I thought that being childish is all what I was doing. I took up engineering and then joined engineering again. Engineering in India, it's quite miserable, especially if you aren't up to the if you aren't very doing well or ambitious enough to do a computer science engineering, it becomes that much more difficult. So I took up engineering in the very first year. I had a couple of backs or three backlogs. Uh, but then it got really hectic. What it does, it gets you mentally. Engineering in India, it gets you mentally. You might know that through your friends. So I was quite, I wouldn't say depressed because I'm not the guy who really takes it to my mind. So, but yeah, it was really some tough time with my family. I used to fight with my mother, especially all the time. But then she just told me this: you don't have to get good scores. They're really supportive. All you have to do is just clear your subject and get through it. Just do engineering because it isn't practical that you spend 1.5 year in this course. Where we spent like 1 2 lakh. I don't know how much that is in dollars, but it's quite expensive. So we did that, and do you think it's practical enough to just quit like that? Just give it a try. Let's see how it goes. They were really supportive. I've got to say that my parents, my aunt, my uncle, everybody were really supportive. They said, "Do what you can. Just try giving your best, and let's see how it goes." Then just went with the flow. Graduated. Worked like at Amazon. I worked at MMPT, that is Humanity Group, as main port of Bangalore. In fact, it's the only major port in Karnataka. I work there, and right now I'm working as a quality analyst. So life's been up and down. It hasn't been bad, no. I'm not complaining about my life, but the regular stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. You said something interesting over there which sort of made me think of this question, and I'll add some context to it. So basically, like in India, at least from what we can tell now, it's very rigid in terms of the choices that we make once we go into college. So, say for example, you pick an engineering, you're sort of expected to continue on that path for the rest of your life. So you're sort of expected to make that life decision when you're 18 or 19 years old. Whereas I'm not saying that this is the case for every person over here in the United States, but what I have noticed is that people who are a lot more older to us also come back to college to study something, to study that they're interested in, and go back again. Do you think that there is this level of, for the lack of a better word, ageism in terms of education and college, wherein it's not looked upon as a good thing if you were to sort of say do engineering when you're 18, 19, 20, but then after 5 or 6 years you're like, you know what, engineering is not necessarily for me. I just want to do some sort of chemistry related degree, and I'll go back to college again. So I guess, what is your sort of take on that? Because I personally feel like making that decision would be a lot harder in India, whereas some places
It
else.
is very hard. But again, I don't want to generalize or the answer generically, but it depends on a person's financial status, basically. So if he's well-to-do, he's got he can explore his options, even like you said, 20 to 25. But he's got nobody in the family. He's the only breadwinner. He has no other option. He likes it or doesn't like it, you'll have to do it. That's how competitive India is, if you know. So yeah, again, it depends from person to person. But lucky are those who really get to explore their dreams, realize their dream. Like they say, better late than never. So yeah, why not? You don't have the options actually, even though they want to do it, but they don't really have the financial liberty to go about it. So the lucky are the ones who actually.
Mm. Yeah, and that's something that, like I said, now it was easy for me to say, oh, in India, they don't necessarily do that. But then you make a very valid point about the fact that the finances are something that are important to everybody. And it's a huge financial decision, excuse me, because it's also an investment in a lot of ways, going back to college, paying a lot amount of money and all that sort of stuff, when you technically could just be earning money and winning bread for your family and sort of, taking life ahead from that perspective. So, like, do you think that the amount of weight our generation puts on finances has changed in comparison to the amount of weight that our previous generations put on finances? The reason I ask that is because our families, at least in many ways, come from a very old school sort of thought of like, okay, engineering is where the money is, or medicine is where the money is. Go there, make the money, and then, be happy from the money that you make. But now I think in a lot of ways there are external options where people can explore different things. So they're not necessarily, not to say that they're not worried, but maybe it's not always their first concern. So what is your sort of thought on that dynamic of our value of money or the requirement of it
It's
from different
evolving.
generations?
It's most definitely evolving. From the times I graduated, like 3 4 years now, parents are being a little more open-minded. Yes, open-minded isn't the right word. They're being a little more flexible. They realize that you just can't shove somebody engineering down their throat, because eventually what matters is being happy. You got to be happy doing what you do and also earn money perpetually. So they've realized that the number hasn't changed drastically, but over the years it has come down. The parents have realized you got to let them choose what they want. So hopefully in the near future, again, like you said, everything falls back onto the financial condition. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that things get better. Students get to choose what they want and realize their dreams. That's important.
Right. For sure. For sure. For sure. Because at the end of the day, I think happiness is sort of the end goal, right? We all want to be happy as people, wherever you may be, whatever financial situation you or your family is in. Happiness is something that we all want, we all seek. But speaking from the perspective of society, do you feel like Indian society values external validation and happiness more.
Oh, very much. You really need, you know that, you lived in India, so you know how
Yeah.
it is. So you need validation for each and everything you do. It's sort of like you make your neighbors happy, you're happy. Your parents are happy. Most importantly, parents are happy. You don't make your neighbors happy. There's always this unhealthy competition. Competition in a healthy way is always good, but unhealthy competition is such that you basically, how do I put it, going about a competition with a guy in a such way that you don't expect him to, you don't want him to grow in a very natural way. So this competition leads to jealousy, a lot of other negative sides, which eventually will be their downfall. They wouldn't realize it, but adding to the point, actually, you made a great point. Happiness is everything. I've got a lot of friends who work in the IT. They got very good packages. They earn in lakhs per month. But what they have come to a realization after all these years working IT is it's not just the money. In the end, it's the peace of mind. You're going back to your bed, getting up with a fresh mind with no tension. That is what it is. That is what is important. But when we start a profession or a career, we don't realize that. We think money is everything. But after IT, taking IT, not just IT, any job for that matter, taking a toll on your mind, you realize money is necessary. I'm not saying money isn't necessary, but happiness, peace of mind is equally as important as money.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I think you sort of value all of those things when you're doing it, because a lot of the time, standing from outside, excuse me, it's very easy to sort of say, oh, he has a good packet now, he's making so much money and he's probably happy. But then you don't really know until you actually sort of dig into the person's head to see if they're actually happy or not. But that sort of brings up an interesting point of the fact that at the end of the day, happiness is internal, don't you think?
Very much. If your mind is happy, what do we say? If you're in that state of mind where you don't feel the urge to perform for others, the urge to need a validation from others, that itself is happiness. Once you get liberated or independent of all these validation that you seek from others, and try to live your life on your own. Money, yes, it comes goes. You never know how the times change. But if you're in that state where you don't bother about what others think, that in itself is happiness. And again, happiness can be different from one individual to another. A workaholic person finds it really happy and really peaceful working all through the day, but a person who isn't just earning for the family has other definition of happiness. And there are few people who are quite happy with the money as well. Money makes them happy. So there are different kinds of people. There's no particular definition for to happiness. What's important is each one finds that what is their happiness, and go with it. That's what is important, is what I believe.
Very true, very true. Because you know, 1 kg Black Forest cake might make me happy, but it might not make Vignesh
Hmm.
happy. So it's a
Yeah,
different thing
that's my point.
for everybody, for sure. So I don't know if you're a fan of Black Forest cake or not, but that was just a random example that popped up.
Yeah. It's actually a
um,
very nice analogy that you put through. That's how it is. What makes me happy doesn't necessarily needs to make you happy as well. Everyone
right,
finds happiness
right.
in different things. So yeah, just be happy, be peaceful, enjoy life.
True, true, very true. This next question is maybe going to be inspired from maybe a bit of a historical context, I guess. But we're the country that sort of had a genesis of, practices like yoga and meditation and all those sort of things, to where, some of these schools of thought also talk about seeking internal happiness. But then here we are, 1,000 years later or whatever, we're trying to seek external happiness, sort of being happy by seeing other people happy by what we're doing. So what do you think went wrong?
Materialistic loving, basically. started being more materialistic than we should have. We have no problem. I have no problem being materialistic because after all, we earn money to keep ourselves happy, buy things that we like, and all those. But like you mentioned, you can't force someone to be happy. He has to realize from within himself that he needs to do this to be happy. So somewhere down the line, like you mentioned, we lost the charm we had thousands of years ago. Uh, when population rises, everything becomes very very competitive. If I'm talking about India alone, that's where everything gets a little tricky. Population, this competitiveness. So if you're ready to work for 15,000 bucks, I'm ready to work for 10,000 bucks, and there's another fellow who's ready to work for 5,000 bucks. But the actual pay of the job should be around 30,000 bucks. So that's how competitive. Like I mentioned, it is not healthy competitive, but it's all about being a survival here. So in a way, our evolution hasn't been kind to Indians, especially. So there's definitely a few things that went wrong. So hopefully, in the future, people fall back to the same track.
Yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Um, Speaking of like unhealthy competition, do you think, because I mean, I don't know now, but well, first, I guess you could answer this question. Do you think that kids are still picking engineering as a choice of career? And the reason I ask that is because I feel like the engineering market has saturated quite a lot in India.
A lot.
So, yeah, like what is your sort of take on that? Are kids still like sort of picking engineering as a career? And if so,
It has declined,
are
like
they
you
not
mentioned.
seeing the saturation? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. No, I'll add to that point. So it has saturated quite a lot. Uh, the problem being the guys who've passed out 2 3 years ago, I still haven't found a job. So imagine lakhs of people graduating every year as freshers. It's just not happening. But in the last 5 6 years, there's been competition for CA as well. People have realized, oh, we could be CA. But again, it's not easy. If you aren't ambitious or you really don't want to do it, you're just doing it for the sake of having a great career. You can't have it because those things aren't easy. People have started to understand that, very few of them always. So that's how it is changing gradually. I'm not saying we had a complete makeover as such, but people have started to understand, you just can't take up engineering because you need a validation from your friends and family. You are an engineer. It doesn't work that way. You have to put in those hard yards. You have to be really dedicated, disciplined, and more importantly, you really want to do it. You want to do it because you want to do it. You're not doing it because others want you to do it. So the numbers that people are doing it for themselves, that's increased quite a lot. But like you said, still a long way to go. Still a long way to go. At this point in time, I say it's 50-50. People are starting to understand things.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. Because saturation now is sort of reached a point where it's visible. Like you said, you
Quite.
see people who've graduated with engineering degrees 3 years back, and they're still not working. They've still not gotten a job. So it does make you question the choice that you're about to make as a person in terms of whether you want to choose engineering or whatever. But well, I guess there is also this thought of, okay, but I might be better than those lakhs of people or 100,000 people who are waiting to get a job, and I can push ahead. I know there's sort of a space for a discussion about that as well, because people are still becoming engineers and people are still getting good packages to where some people are able to go abroad and make good money. So I guess it'd be ignorant to say that engineering as a field is dead. It's not,
No, it
because
is not.
engineering is still growing.
It is.
But yeah. But what is that sort of weird dynamic you feel in terms of the saturation, but still the fact that the people who are doing really well will take that step ahead and
It
go
all
ahead?
comes down to I personally believe it all comes down to the natural ability. They can teach you coding and all those stuff, but unless you get back home, start coding for yourself, start liking it, most importantly, It's not happening. And like you mentioned, around 70% of the people taking up engineering or any stream for that matter, which has that validation point, just doing it for the sake of others. So when you do that, things are not going to fall into place. Yeah, you might get decent amount of salary with your job, but you just can't keep climbing. I've got friends who have got like really good packages. They're happy. There's work pressure, that's secondary, but they're happy doing what they're doing, and they're also quite good at it, which is again coming back to the point, there are very few people who are quite good at it. So when that happens, yes, they've gone abroad, they've become managers, they're playing, they've started their own startups. That is happening. I'm not saying engineering as a entire discipline or engineering as an entire field is dead. There's a lot of boom. There's a lot of computer science. My point being here is, if you are interested, go ahead. If you aren't, or if you're doing it for the sake of others, or validation, like you mentioned earlier, just don't do it. It is it is going to come back biting to you at some point. That is for sure. Maybe when you don't get the job, or after you get the job, you realize, oh, what am I doing here? It is going to come back to you, but then by then it'll be too late to so choose wisely is what I'm saying.
Definitely, definitely. You make a very valid point there about being smart about the choice that you make. But to sort of go back on something that you mentioned earlier too about finances being important,
Hmm.
and a lot of the decisions being motivated by that, is it sort of, I guess it's a little crudely to put it this way, but it's a little crude maybe, but do you think there's a lack of maybe perseverance from some end? No, I'm not saying of the people who are not interested in engineering at all, but people who are sort of 50-50, where they have interest but they don't want to put in the effort. So do you think that there is that lack of perseverance that exists in society, which is why people are not um and I mean, again, I'm not trying to overly generalize, because everybody has different situations, and their life is sort of motivated by other external factors that sometimes they have no control over. So it's definitely hard, but to sort of take all of those caveats out and to just look at the aspect of perseverance in within the perspective, like within society, do you think that some of it is maybe lost, or are people not finding it? What is it about? What is your sort of take on that?
We Indians are historically very lazy. We just don't want to give our 100%. We never do actually. But the time when we give 100%, we kill it. That's how Indians work. So, like you correctly mentioned, 50% you're not interested, 50% you don't want to put in that extra effort. But in the end, things don't work for you, right? In the end, they'll all come back biting to you. It isn't. It is going to hurt. It isn't going to hurt your parents, your spouse, for that matter. It is going to come back to you. So whatever you do, even I'm not saying taking up. Everybody makes mistake, but the sooner you realize that what you're doing isn't enough, or you're not in the right place, you just better make that switch. The sooner you do it, the better it is for everybody. And so yeah, I'll have to agree to that point what you made. It's all about perseverance. People perceive things differently. If you get mentally prepared that you can do it, if you think so, you definitely can do it. Some people just say no even before starting. So again, you can't generalize each and every individual. So, in whole of us, as like, if I'm generally speaking, that is now, we are historically lazy. So there's that definite little bit of laziness, or fallback attitude in our DNA. I'm not denying that, but then again, whatever it is, whatever decisions you've taken up is you realize it is wrong. Just don't stay there. Just let's see how it goes. Let's see if I can, for how long as I can push it. Don't do that. You realize you're not in the right place, just switch things. If you're again, like you mentioned, financially stable. If you're financially stable, you're the only bread earner, you've got no option. You have to go ahead if you like it or not. So yeah, if a few of my friends are lucky, so if they have that financial stability to fall back on, just switch careers, man. You just can't doing what you don't like forever.
Hmm. let's expand on this thought of us, like as Indians, sort of seeing as being lazy, because the flip side to that, I do think that a lot of the external world probably looks at us as a bunch that's quite hardworking as well. So yeah, talk to me about that dynamic from your own perspective in terms of that sort of laziness that we have, as you mentioned. I don't know if it's fully laziness, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if
I'd
it's
say,
laziness. I
yeah,
don't know what it is. I
we, are
don't know what it
we
is.
procrastinate, basically
Mm,
procrastinators.
mm, mm,
So it's a combination of being lazy or being ignorant and everything. But Indian, like I mentioned, you give 100%. We as Indians can do anything we want. There are a lot of examples. I don't have to mention it. So we procrastinate a lot. We just wait for that in the last moment. We somehow one other thing that I really love about us, we somehow get things done. No matter how hard it is, you just find a way. You just do it. That's how I guess that's how the world perceives as Indians as well. There are a lot of hardworking people. I'm not going to say no. We're a country of multi billions. You get every type of individuals. But as a whole, like I said, I believe that includes me as well. It's a mixture of being lazy, ignorant, or there's a bit of a little bit of arrogance as well. It all combines together to become a procrastinator. So eventually that leads up to getting things done in nick of time.
mm. Yeah, very true. Because yeah, at the end of the day, it is that sort of work that you put in, and that is sort of proportional to growth in many ways.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting sort of topic to think about, because we don't necessarily, well, people talk about procrastination a lot for sure, but I don't know if there's like maybe a method to where people can find themselves to come out of it, or maybe people are maybe struggling to come out of being in that phase of procrastinating. Do you think that is the major issue with people procrastinating, is the fact that they can't come out of it, or are they just sort of choosing that to be the way?
Because procrastination is a habit. Once you start procrastinating things, it just perpetually goes on to each and everything that you do in your life. So when it happens, you say that Bakaduka, like you say, Bakaduka, Dana from Duka. So there's that attitude of being a little arrogant and being a little lazy. So when that happens, most important thing is the things we do after procrastinating actually works out well. So we think that okay, since it's working out well, we can procrastinate again. So again, we do the same thing again. It somehow we manage to get through it. It becomes like a cycle. So unless it hits you back in a very hard way, you don't realize what you're doing isn't right. So like you said, one there has to be a big certain blow. It puts you back a lot. So when that happens, maybe people can get out of it. Otherwise, no. You procrastinate, things happen. You procrastinate, things happen. It's just a cycle that keeps on repeating.
Right, right, right. For sure, for sure. Because I mean, not to say that I still procrastinate on quite a few occasions too. So it is definitely something that we all can think about in terms of what it is that is stopping us from taking that jump and getting out of that phase of being uh, serial procrastinator. Because like you said, it's like that you will get some result out of the work that you do even after procrastinating, so you choose to continue keeping that loop. And I've been there. I still am there sometimes. So it's a mistake that we all make, but it's a mistake that we can all come out from as well. But you made another interesting point earlier about us as a society being ignorant, so I want to sort of expand on that. What do you think, and this is a very broad question, I guess, but what do you think we are ignorant about? It can be about anything from your perspective, but it could be about society, life, culture, lifestyle, whatever. But what do you think we're ignorant about the most?
Anything that doesn't happen to us, we're ignorant. Basically, that it happens to you, you can't ignore it, right? If it happens to somebody else, we are being ignorant. We just don't turn up and do it for them. So, especially in India, I'll give an instance. There's an accident, so a guy lies on the floor, he's bleeding profusely, he's survived, somehow managing to breathe. And there's this bunch of people, instead of taking him to the hospital, they record his video so that it gets viral, and all that stuff, sort of stuff. So again, had it happened to one of their own, they wouldn't be doing that. Unless it happens to yourself, to or any one of your loved ones, you're not ignorant. You're very cautious, so that the thing doesn't get much bad. But if it happens to somebody else you don't know about, you're being completely ignorant. In fact, you go a step ahead and make a mockery of the situation as well. So that's how it is.
Yeah, a very valid point, because it's an issue with a lot of things in society, definitely. Like, oh, something happened somewhere. Like, yeah, I mean, nammada point. Like, what of ours is
Hmm.
gone? Nothing. So you sort of just move on. And there is that statement of, ignorance is bliss and all that. Yes, to an extent, but there is a certain limit. There is a certain extent to nuance in that as well, to where not all ignorance is bliss, because you can't
Hmm.
ignore, if, say, for example, now maybe this is not the best example, but somebody, maybe because of the external pressure that they had, like a young kid, started smoking or whatever, just to sort of seek that relief, because they believe that that's the way to seek relief. So you're like, yeah, I don't know why I'm in the mood to speak some Tulu, but aina magyata, aina anchene. Like, it's
Hmm.
like usually that sort of mentality of like, yeah, it's his son, no, he's always been like that. He always does things like that and all that sort of stuff. But then sometimes we can fail to realize that if our own flesh is within that circle, he might soon latch on to that too. So, uh, you can't necessarily be ignorant about things like that. So it's an interesting point. I mean, again, not the best example, I guess, but it's something that we all need to think about in
Hmm.
terms of the implications of um, things that are happening around us. But I guess at the same time, with saying that, you can't necessarily let that rule your life, because you can't sort of um, take a step back and be like, no, I won't do this, or no, I won't do that, because otherwise I'll end up like him, you know?
Hmm.
Because everybody's circumstances are different. So yeah, it's a very valid point for sure. And yeah, do you want to expand on that?
Like you mentioned about smoking, right? Most of them actually start smoking because they need that validation from the peers. That's how
Ah,
it starts.
right,
You
right, right.
smoke, you're a cool guy. I don't know how it works in Europe or US for that matter, but in India at least, you smoke because you need that validation. You need that entry pass to your friends and peers. So they do that, and then when things don't go right, they just blame it on cigarettes. I've got a lot of pressure. I have to smoke it out. It doesn't work that way. There are a lot of people who doesn't smoke, and they still like life isn't easy, but they take pressure in the right way. So yeah, I wanted to add on that point.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you sort of opened up another discussion topic there about peer pressure, or like just peer influence, if not pressure. Um, why are we so worried about feeling feeling the need to be within a circle? Does it go back to that sense of validation and the need to feel like you're part of a circle, or I don't know, it's a choice that you're making because you want to do it? Like, what are the sort of dynamics in your own perspective of peer influence and peer pressure?
Peer influence isn't just existing in colleges and schools. If you go back to prison for that matter, when you go in, you always take your sides. So in prison, it works well because you need their support when things don't go in your way. So when somebody bashes you, so you have your gang to back it up. The similar sort of concept gets carried away in the schools as well. You can't stay. You're a fresher guy. You comes away from some other city. You don't know the people there. So what happens is once you get that validation that you or belief that you're in this particular group, So you have this thing that no matter if something goes wrong, they'll have sorry, I'll always have them to for the support. So that's how initially the pressure. No, I wouldn't say pressure. There has been cases of pressure as well. They're literally forcing somebody to smoke, drink. But like you mentioned, the peer influence is that thing to get into the group. Have them feel comfort within the group. That date backs to not many years ago, not just in colleges. Everywhere you need that. Even in your work, there's bunch of people, talking different shit about different things. So that's how it works. That's how a society works. That's how we humans live. So yeah, but I also want to add, just because you want to be in the group doesn't mean you need to smoke, drink, or do the things they want you to do. You can still be friends with them, still get very very close. But I don't understand this obsession with getting that validation by doing drugs or smoking or drinking. Just I just don't understand. It's quite very complex one.
For sure. And you made a very interesting point about it going back many years too, because I do have a bit of an interest in like evolutionary psychology. I don't know much about it, but I can definitely see that sort of being an influence to where back in the day you needed your tribes, you needed your circles to sort of be safe and be able to fight in groups if needed. Um, because if you're standing alone, then you're probably less likely to sort of be able to go through that phase or whatever that might be, especially while we as a species were developing. So it's a very interesting concept to think about in terms of how our evolution as humans has sort of influenced our way of being in the present world. And there's many things that can also be changed about that because not everything that happened then applies now. But it's an interesting thing to sort of think about. Do you have any sort of takes on evolutionary psychology or like things like how things flow in from one generation, but then the need to sort of adapt that as generations change? Do you have any take on that, like from a more mentality perspective?
Like you mentioned, adaptability is everything. They say that you evolve, you survive. You've got a better chance of survival. So whatever our ancestors did way back in 500, 600 years ago doesn't mean that we'll have to be doing it now. Things change. Environment change, people change, habits change, the way of living changes. So the adaptability is a key factor here. The sooner you adapt, sooner it gets easier for everyone. Okay. So that's how things work. Like and also the special mention about the tribes that he said. It dates back very long years ago. So what happens is if you're an individual, you have you're less likely to survive. You hunt in pace, like there's a hunt in pace. So you're in group, you got a better shot at life. So that's evolved. And now it's come down to peer pressure sort of thing. So that's how it is.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely like a thing for us to sort of think about because there's a lot of things that, like you said, and we sort of mentioned, there is a need to adapt. So I believe time has its own way of sort of teaching you lessons. So like if you don't learn now, eventually
Time,
time will show
yeah,
you.
time, yeah.
Yeah, eventually time will find its way to sort of make you look at the situation and fix it for the better. So it's definitely something to sort of think about. But to transition into a different topic a little more, you mentioned when we opened that music is your interest and you want to sort of expand on that a little more and that you're into songwriting and things like that. Was that something that you feel like you always had a bug for, or was it something that was inspired later on as you grew up?
Well, that thing, I think I get that from my family. My mother is a musician. My uncle is a very famous musician. So, like I mentioned, the influence. Ever since you're a child, you've seen them sing, you've seen them do bhajans and all those. So eventually, that gets to you. I don't know. I don't know if it's psychological or something, but then you grow up and you know how it happens, right? A cricketer's son becomes a cricketer. footballer's son becomes a footballer. It doesn't necessarily have to be a good one, but he really ventures out into that one because he's seen growing. He's seen that while he's growing, that his parents are doing that. So I think I get that motivation from my. I wouldn't say motivation, probably an inspiration is the right word, from my family. So yeah, that's how music is has gotten into it. So to say.
Mm. And what ways are you sort of using to explore that interest that you have in music?
Well, quite a lot actually. I've got a cousin brother of mine who's a brilliant musician. He's a studio audio engineer as well. So what we do is we make songs. We make a couple of electronic pop tracks. It's out there, and but right now we're working on this individual song. It's in the programming production process. So when that happens, we're hopeful that we'll bring on a good singer on board, and I'm very happy with the way it's sounding. So who knows? When it comes out, uh, things might change. So I don't go out in the hope that it changes, but it gives me a certain kind of happiness to put my stuff out there. So it doesn't necessarily have to give me the fame, the money, and all those, but just putting it out there and knowing that people would listen to you doesn't. They don't have to like it, but just putting it out there, so that this is your stuff. You're doing it out. You're putting it out in the market. That itself gives me immense satisfaction. That I mean, music gives me gives me that. For some other, probably in coding or dancing. So that's how it is.
Definitely. Definitely. So is your interest sort of mostly in like electronic or like pop type music, or like are you sort of someone that is open to dabbling into many different types of music?
Well, actually, that's I get asked that question quite a lot. I'm not I don't pick on a particular genre because songs it's music itself is a genre. If you see put it that way, if you check on my playlist, I've got 70s Kannada songs, and the next one I've got a David Guetta track, and then it goes back to devotional one. Then there's a national, whatever it is, Asam Desi Aate and all. So it's a mixture of whatever I like, whatever I find. So I'm basically, I'd say, an audiophile. So what happens is when you play a song, an average one just listens to the song. But what does an audiophile do is basically, try to open it up. You got the bass going in the background. You've got the rhythm, you've got the lead, you've got the vocals, you've got sometimes harmonies. So there's everything that's going in the background. So it all comes down to again how well the mixing is. I don't know. It gives me a lot of pleasure, exploring that part of a song or a track for that matter. So that's how it is. And also, it's just there, man. I could sit all night long doing that. I don't feel sleepy. But if I do something that I don't like doing, I'm already sleepy and no, I can't do this. I'll procrastinate. But things like this, it's not just me. I guess it's the same with you as well. You do things you want, you like, you do it with all your heart. But certain things which you don't like, sort of procrastinate and push it, and that attitude of let's see what happens. That's how it is.
Definitely. Definitely. Do you think that this may be more of an external question about music, but do you think that we sort of box certain musicians or singers within a certain genre? Because, say, for example, I mean, this is a very vintage example, I believe, but like a SPB, like a SP Balasubramaniam, he's sung in many different languages, many different genres, and he's done so many different things. But I also feel like nowadays, though, or not nowadays, but then sometimes, say, if an Ed Sheeran who's used to doing a emotional ballad or whatever suddenly ventures into a different kind of pop song, some people are sort of taken aback by that. They're like, wait, this is not the Ed Sheeran I know, this is not what I like. Do you think a lot of it is just sort of perceived that way because of the consumer's outlook on music? Because I guess there's also some fear associated with losing your crowd. Um, for some of these musicians. But like, what's your sort of outlook on that?
So a mixture of both, like you mentioned. Music is again it's business. So certain artists, let's take Ed Sheeran for that example. He's a pop guy. He does a lot of pop songs. He writes his songs. A brilliant guy. So what happens is he's got that set bunch of audience that expect him to give that a certain kind of song with all he writes song and romantically got a melodic rhythm, plays the acoustics well. So when that doesn't happen, all of it, no matter how good the music is, let's put the technical aspect aside. They just not ready to accept it. There's a complete rejection of music. So for a musician, I'll tell you how it works. After doing the same thing for a repeated amount of time, you get really sick of it. In fact, I've seen a lot of interviews of producers, and this is just tired of doing the same thing. You can't do everything, for a long period of time. Music, especially, is such a big branch. You have to venture out if you're talented. So when that happens, that's again all business. Producers want to venture out something. Then there's record labels. They have their own agenda behind it. Then there's the consumers, which is the most important one, commercially speaking. When they don't accept it, no matter how good the music is, it really hurts the musician. So, but then 2, 3, 4 years down the line, they realize, oh, okay, this too is good music. And then when he starts doing that sort of music, they get attached to that. Then again, when he explores other options, it's the same case. Classic example, I guess, it's Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars started out as a very pop guy, brilliant, one of my favorite artists, brilliant. So he started out making all those pop songs, romantic pop songs. Then all of a sudden he ventures out into, these funky ones, those uptown funk. For a while, it was good. He's a great musician. He can do anything, and everything sounds good. But then now, I see a lot of comment on his Instagram or his YouTube channel, for that matter. He won that 10-year-old Bruno Mars back. Not saying we're not necessarily saying these are bad. This is bad music, but we just want to that older one. It's again nostalgia. Uh, People relate to songs in very different ways. There are some songs which are really badly written, badly written musically, even lyric wise, but they've got certain memories attached to it. They just can't ignore that. It becomes their favorite song ultimately. So movies, I guess you could say it's a bad movie. No, it can't be a favorite one. But music, you have no idea. Any song and anything and everything could be a favorite one. So that's how it is.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you saying that reminded me of why this color very deep, because that song is not about, maybe it's gonna sound like a hot take, but it's not like the best written song. It's just a it has a funny, it has its like nice, like funny lyrics that are sort of relatable, and it has this nice beat to it, the nice tune and everything that sort of just, I guess, gets people into that certain mood or funk. Because the way that that song blew up, like around that 2010, 11 time, it was crazy. Like everybody was just singing about Cola Very, but now if you look back on it, like personally, I don't think it was like the best written song in the world, but like you said, like some things just latch on and they just stick. um so like we mentioned Cola Very D, but like, yeah, what's your sort of take on that, in terms of, do you see any other songs that like were sort of big within Indian culture or in like even Western worlds, but are not necessarily like the best songs or like the well written song? It just worked because of the beat or whatever it was that made it work.
There's a lot of pop songs in English, especially the American music. It doesn't make sense. Lyrics is bad. Lyrically, I'll have to give it up to our Indian writers. They write beautifully. They just write it in such a way that it just gets to you. But pop musicians in USA just throw it, just put it straightforward out there. But it's that music and the entire feel behind the pop music that really gets the money. So yeah, like you mentioned, musician doesn't put out hoping expecting that this thing blows up. He does his job. Anil Ravichandran is the music composer of the song. It was probably around 2022 when he did that. Yeah, but it is not a great song by any stretch. But if you see his discography as a musician. He's got a lot of other great songs which haven't been that, it hasn't got that proper reach. So I think destiny has played its part here. Man. They put a lot of hard work. You expect something to blow up, it doesn't blow up. Then there's some silly written song. It's very catchy. Everybody is dancing to it. That's how life works.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Sort of going more into like your inspirations in music. You said you were sort of inspired by your family because you're surrounded by musicians in many ways. But what are your sort of inspirations, or what is who are some musicians that inspire you? Firstly, second of all, what are some inspirations that you pick out from them as people and their music?
I've got plenty. If I have to name five Indians, yeah, I'll just name five Indians, or just three Indians. One is SPB, obviously. The man is just, how do I say, once in a lifetime kind of a guy. Sang in languages that I didn't even know existed. And then he sung it so nicely, like he speaks the language. It's just God's gift. He's there, definitely there. And there's Ilayaraja. I don't know if you've heard. He's a
Yeah, is
Ilayaraja.
he Tamil
He's
or
a
Telugu?
Tamil guy. He's a Tamil guy.
Tamil, okay.
So this Ilayaraja is a magician. Ilayaraja is a magician. Yeah, I'd say A.R. Rahman, Ilayaraja is one step ahead of A.R. Rahman. A.R. Rahman too is not great, but what Ilayaraja does, I haven't heard a lot of his songs. I have a lot of his Kannada songs. Shankar Nag used to be associated with him a lot. So what this Ilayaraja does is, there's this concept of interlude and preludes in music. Preludes are the ones, before the actual verse starts, there's this music, intro music, right? Those are the preludes. So interludes, especially back in those old songs, interludes are there's a musical part between the verse and the next verse. There's a lot of musical part happening. If a lot of old songs, a lot of music. So nobody does interludes better than Ilayaraja. And one other thing about Ilayaraja is I've heard few of his 70s, 80s songs. He's used synthesizers that our modern day DJs use. And mind you, all of these songs were recorded analog, so they're not digital. So what basically essentially it means is all the musicians have to play it right. If they don't play it right, you don't get another chance. You have to retake. But now it isn't like that. You can record from my place. I can record. Somebody else can record from his place and mix it up together. So with that, and also Ilayaraja is the only one actually SPB sort of is to afraid to. So what happens is, imagine SPB is singing a song. So he takes his verse a little late. So Ilayaraja has days in SP to stop the song, and they'll have to stop it. They'll have to take it up again in a live show. So that's how influential he's been, especially to me. He's quite old. I don't know. It's just that his music in general, technically speaking, is one of the best musicians out there. He, in fact, he's got a gold medal in classical guitar, if I'm not wrong, from some college in the US. So but again, as a person, he's quite arrogant. So there's downside to everything. He's my, as a music composer, Ilayaraja is definitely up there. And then as a singer, I'll have to say modern day singer, it's KK, man, by by a lot, by much, by miles. I love Sonu Nigam too, but KK is actually I see a lot of me in KK. He too is untrained. Untrained. He's got no classical background, but the way he sings all those songs is just, again, it goes back to my childhood days. And he's the guy who says, people should know me for my music, not my face. So not many know. I've been to a couple of KK's concerts. I've literally had people, when he sings Aako Mein Teri from Om Shanti Om, like, oh, do Ayana Pandit. So what we're essentially saying is, oh, this is the guy who sang that song. So it kept on happening for all the songs he sang. All the songs he sang is monstrous hit, but they don't know who this fellow is. So there's that. And who else? Those three are my main in India. Then there's Dire Straits, it's a classic band. If I have to pick one guitar player who I absolutely love and adore or revere, it has to be Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits. Sultans of Sin, have you heard? You must have heard Sultans of Sin. You'll have to give
I
it
have
a
not, no.
listen. It's one of it's the greatest song ever made, for me personally. So he's been of great influence. So they don't have to, inspire musically. the discipline can, you can take that discipline into your aspect of life, and you can, start getting disciplined as well. So inspiration doesn't have to be just musically. You can draw inspiration in any forms and shapes is what I feel.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, because there's definitely a lot to learn from everybody, right? Irrespective of the kind of music they make, or like their personality as people. I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking of this example, but uh, Anu Malik is someone who's like people tend to laugh about sometimes, but he's made some music that sticks with you for, at least for me personally. Like, I guess one of my most watched movies is Mehuna. I've probably gone back and watched that movie many times. He was the music like composer for that, like music director for that movie, and a lot of those songs are just beautiful, and like to me they feel quite timeless in many ways. So it's just those sort of things, right? Like sometimes it's sort of like, oh, you only need to learn music from this person because he's a musician, or you only need to learn coding from this person because he's a coder or whatever. But then that person themselves, they bring a lot on the plate that also makes them who they are. So there's definitely a lot to learn from there as well. So you made a really interesting point there, which I just wanted to expand on a little more. But for you personally, as someone who's like interested in making music, working on right now, I guess we could talk about this a little. What is your sort of take on old songs being making a comeback in the form of Bacha?
Totally against it. But then, T series, I don't want to say T series family skills. They own the rights. It's their song. They can do whatever they want. Who are we to question? But here, emotionally, it really hurts, when they do that. But there has been very rare cases of old songs actually being done really well. There's this one song, "हर किसी को नहीं मिलता." That's been done so well. I actually didn't know it was an old song. So there have been very few instances where they will justify the way. I've got a big problem with Tanish Bakchi, if you know who that guy is. So this guy, Tanish Bakchi, is basically works for T series. All the old songs, not necessarily very old, all the songs we grew up listening to, like they say Saki Saki, and a lot of songs, a lot of those old those 2000 early 2000 songs. So this guy doesn't even make an. I can, I don't know whether it's a talent or something. As soon as I listen to the song, I can instantly figure out this is a Tanish Bakchi's production. He uses those same Arabic style beats. For heaven's sake, man, he works on Logic Pro. Logic Pro is a digital audio workstation by Apple. That in itself has like tons of rhythms that he can select on. But this guy can't. He doesn't even make an effort. That's what bothers me. I'm not blaming him for taking all those projects. It gives them a lot of money, but at least make an effort to sound different. Same template that he used for all the crazy songs. And what's even bad is all those songs get 200, 300 millions of views. Just ridiculous. And to add on to that, Tanish himself is a very good composer. He's composed original songs like Bolna, Mahi Bolna, there's that, and there's another party song. So he lets us know that he's talented. But when we get just lazy and do this all the time, I just can't take it. It really hurts, and especially when
Hmm.
it's done.
Yeah. With the element of like, or this is probably mainly about like Indian music and where it is today. Do you think it's more so that there's this perception that nostalgia sells more than freshly composed music?
Current affairs is new Spider-Man movie coming. They've brought in all those OG villains. I bet it is going to be easily one of the highest grossing movies of all time, irrespective of how good the movie is. Just because people of my age, especially our age, 90s kids, will definitely rush into theaters to, relive those moments. So we're not complaining. It's a great experience for us, and it's a great experience for it's a great money making strategy from the studio as well. cashing on nostalgia. It happens in movies, it happens in songs, especially. But I myself, being a musician, if you don't present it well enough, no matter how close you are to the song, I just don't like it. You have to, the thing is, remake a song, but present it in a different flavor. Just don't do the same repetitive thing. Just really hurts, man.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of flaw with a lot of these songs, right? Maybe because 90% is, or 95% of it is still the same song that was there in the past. Maybe it's just a different singer, or maybe a few minute things that have been changed around. But other than that, it kind of sounds like you're listening to the same song from like 15 years ago. So I guess that's sort of like the gripe that people tend to have um, with it. But speaking of which, like, I'm sure there's a lot of independent singers and musicians that are sort of coming up and doing their work that people adore. Like, I guess a big example of that is probably like a Prateek, right? Like, he's done such good work, and I, not that I know of, I might be wrong, but I don't know much of his discography, to be quite honest with you. But I don't think he's sung in a movie, has he?
Not yet, I guess. I'm not sure. But his songs has been remade. I'm not sure. I'm not a big Pratik fan, so I don't know. I respect
Gotcha.
him as an artist for coming out the way and making doing it big in the US, in India. But I just don't dig his music. Again, it's very subjective.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. Maybe he's a good singer, but I'm more. I don't know. It just doesn't click with. It just didn't click with me. So
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. Again, like, we all have our preferences, so that's totally fine. But I was just sort of curious because like, what my question was going to be was that, with a lot of these sort of independent talents also doing well, where do you see music going in the future, from the perspective of, like, or from your perspective, as someone who is also sort of venturing into it, working with people, trying to like explore your own sort of possibilities? So where do you see all of that going?
again, everything is getting commercialized. Even these indie ones, eventually they get commercialized. So money again is an important factor. But somewhere down the line, because we commercialize music so much, we lose its essence. The quality, like you mentioned, it's been the same. It hasn't gone down, but it hasn't gone up as well. So when that happens, the quality seems to go down. But then I don't blame these indie artists really signing up for all these big labels. You have to make money. You just can't say that no, I'll stay independent and not make money. Nobody says that. So these guys, once you sign the deal, you're gone, dude. Especially in India, you have absolutely no right over your song. They can do whatever the hell they want. So a lot of indie artists actually refrain from doing that. But the few ones who do that, there's been Raftar actually. He was quite famous as an independent artist. Then he signed up. He's been doing well. I'm not saying I don't know, but again, their independence will be cut down by large amount. So going ahead, music is getting commercialized. He get commercialized even more. It's just musicians out there listening to it. Just keep the essence going. Originality is everything. You can make many remakes and remixes as you want, but in the end, people connect to music with whatever is original. You don't connect or feel nostalgic about a remake song. You'll always fall back to the original one. So yeah, do that. Why not? Make money as well.
Right, for sure, for sure. I think, again, this is from an outsider's perspective, but I do think that the market is in a good position today to where maybe an indie artist can make a good amount of money too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure the ones that sing in movies probably make a ton, and a lot more than indie artists. But then I think there is always some room for maybe the indie music industry to grow. So that's definitely something to look forward to in the future. But to sort of go back to something you said initially, also, like you want to put yourself out as a person through the music that you produce and work on. There's another thing that you're sort of using to or channel rather that you're putting yourself out through, which is YouTube. You recently started your channel, if I'm not mistaken. So, what was your sort of thought process behind that?
Yeah, I always wanted to speak my mind. So I always had this initial inhibition that what others will think, what if I'm speaking isn't the right one. Then one fine day, suddenly, I don't know what clicked in me. I realized that no, all I have to do is consistently keep doing what I want. I'm not looking, eventually something or the other will happen. My duty as a guy who does videos is just consistently keep uploading videos. So I don't stick on to a particular concept. Whatever comes to my mind, whatever I feel I'm good at, not particularly good at, I do a little bit of research and put it out there. So far the responses have been good. I'm just like you mentioned earlier about your channel, just doing it. Let's see how far it goes. Just keep on doing what you do, and eventually, hopefully, something big turns up.
Hmm. What was that sort of initial feeling in your head when you put that first video out and it went live?
I used to do a lot of one take covers of the songs. Actually, there's this the first initial video was my review video of earphone. I don't use it anymore. It's spoiled. So that has around one and a half, I don't know, k views. I uploaded it
Nice.
last year. So it was a one take video again. I don't edit my stuff. So what I did was that was quite the response was good. A lot of guys commented, good knowledge. It's good one, keep it up. And then suddenly I stopped doing it. I actually went ahead of myself, got ahead of myself, and thought, yeah, why not do a proper setup? That doesn't work that way. You'll have to grow, step by step. So I thought, yeah, let's put in a mic, record it professionally. It never happened. Then I started putting up my, one take song covers, and then like I mentioned, my last month or so, I realized why not just speak your mind out. I know a few things about cricket, and so I discuss it with my friend, and others I just put it out there, whatever. And it's also again it's subjective. I always tell my viewers, whatever your opinion is, just let me know down below. You can have an open conversation, constructive conversation. So that's how it is.
Definitely, definitely. To sort of hit on something that you mentioned again, like you sort of got ahead of yourself and sort of thought, okay, maybe I can, like, get some professional equipment and sort of get things going from there. I think a lot of the times, there is this sentiment or feeling that it's those things that elevate your the content that you're putting out, for the lack of a better word, which is true. But I think it's sort of like a thing for stages, right? Like it's not like you graduate to doing it off of your laptop to suddenly jump into doing it in like a professional setup. You sort of have to gradually climb and climb and climb, and then you sort of reach a point where you can integrate those things. That's just my personal opinion about it, because, like, to sort of relate to you in that sense, the best podcast mic is probably in terms of the amount of people that use it and like its quality. I think it's called the Shure SM7B or something like that. It's a really good mic, but it's a really expensive mic too. So it's sort of easy to get carried away in the sense that this using this will make my podcast better. Sure, it will, but then when you're initially starting, I think that's not what matters. It's the sort of just reps and output that you can get. So what helped you sort of get out of that funk of like, okay, I can do this without the professional equipment. I don't need something that high end to just do my bit.
Uh, on YouTube, you don't invest other than your time. You don't invest anything. So I just realized until and unless I get to a certain point where I can afford myself to buy all these equipment, like you mentioned, I don't have to do that. There are few people they've got great content, but they have then that great when it comes to communicating. Then there are the people who've got great setup. They are just the content isn't good enough. So the things being like that, I just realized that I just have to do it consistently. Keep on doing, keep on doing, have that consistency, and then you just you just can't see the future. You have to be just hopeful and keep your fingers crossed that one day or the other things click for you. When that happens, then you can go ahead and do it. So that realization was late, but a great one. It really helped me, see things in a much clearer way. So that's how it began. So all I think of is just putting my content out there. Yeah, once it goes live, it goes live.
Very true, very true. And it's, I guess, that sense of detachment in the sense that you've done the work that you can now, but you can't necessarily control the way people react to it because they react to it in the way that they want to react to it. So it's that element of seeking happiness from the fact that you're putting it out there, which, I guess it's hard to sort of think of it that way, especially in a generation that is very much motivated by views and likes. And, well, the dislike button doesn't exist in its old form anymore. But, all those sort of things tend to motivate the way content is produced and things like that. But I guess for the stages that we are in our terms of in our content creation, that's not the biggest thing that we need to worry about because it's things like that take time. So was that something that you sort of came in thinking about? Was time like on your mind, or was it just like, you know what, manpuga dadandu sort of
That sort of thing.
like frame of
And
mind?
important thing that I want to add to this is platforms like content creation. You expect something to go viral, it doesn't go viral. Some random video of yours or random content of yours is just, if you're destined enough, the content may or may not be that great, but it just goes viral. And all those many years of hard work and dedication really pays dividend then. So, like you mentioned, just have to keep on doing what you do. One fine day it clicks, and more importantly, adding to that point you said, you have to do your bit. You can't control what others want to see, what other perceive your things. Just it's under their control. So once you realize that what you do is important, and things takes its place, it becomes that much more clearer in your mind. So that's how we started doing. I haven't invested anything other than my time. I do a research a little. I do my research because it's important not to speak false facts. And I do a little research on that. I make my videos. Sometimes, if necessary, I edit it and just put it out there, hoping that people like it. Even if they don't, always welcome to correct it. Just go about it.
Definitely, definitely, bro. That's a great outlook to have. So kudos to you for that. Because I think, like we sort of touched on, like it's very easy to sort of be motivated by the external validation that you might get. So it's easy, like it's very easy to sort of be demotivated when you don't see a video getting a like or getting as many views and not getting as many subscribers and all that sort of stuff. So that can definitely feel quite demotivating. But at the end of the day, um, you know, knowing that it'll pay dividends if you're sort of working on it is definitely the sort of approach to have in that sense. So kudos to you for that. Um, you know, to sort of transition into like the last few questions before we go into the word association game. Um, through all of the things that we've talked about, I'm sure a lot of things that have happened in school or college have had an influence on you in many ways. So if you were to, and this, I'm sure this is hard, it's not that easy to sort of just pick one thing, specific thing, but if you were to sort of pick one specific lesson, or let's make it a little more, maybe two or three lessons that you learned from school and college that you might probably suggest to somebody who's in that phase now, what would those lessons be?
Firstly, you always have more time than you think you have. It is never too
Oh,
late. If you always have that extra time, it is never too late to speak to your people, to your parents. I've realized that, and especially if your parents are supportive, just don't have a second thought. Go about it. And secondly, like I mentioned, don't pick up something because your friends did. It happens quite a lot. I did the same mistake too, and even the people who are listening will do the same thing. But then again, it's my duty as a person who's been through it to just relate out there. Don't pick anything that your friends do. Your friend may like it, so he picked it, so it clicks well with him. It doesn't necessarily have to click with you. So there's that, and what else? And also, an important other thing, be patient. Things take, when we grow old, we realize how it doesn't. When our parents used to buy stuff for us, we used to splurge, spend money like anything. But then when you once you start earning, you realize things take time. So be patient, and most important, like I said earlier, there's always more time than you think for whatever, any rash decisions you take, or you want to change your discipline where you're studying. There's always more time than you think. So yeah, that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is great. That's a great way to sort of close this off, this section of the podcast. So thank you so much for answering all of my questions. We're going to go into the word association game, which is called Bish Bash Bosh. But basically, I will give you one word, or there's 5 words in total, but I'll give you one word at a time, and you have to respond to each word in either 3 different words or 3 different phrases. So for example, if I was to say music, what are the 3 things that sort of come to your mind when I say the word music? That's the sort of way that this flows. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot music. Probably I can say 30 different words. Others I'm not
Right,
quite sure.
right.
Yeah, so let's see how it goes.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay. And yeah, this is a segment where usually every guest gets the same words, just as a way to see how people respond to the same words differently or similarly. So yeah, the first word for this segment of Bish Bash Bosh is differences. What are the 3 things that sort of call out to you when I say the word differences?
Differences, understanding. mm, Understanding, what are the differences? Sorry, not understanding, misunderstanding. um, Lack of communication. Other thing, differences, I think, lack of being open, I guess.
Hmm.
Failure to open up, or just say loyalty, if you want to put it in a proper word, loyalty. Yeah, those things.
Interesting. The second word is nuance. What are the 3 things that sort of call out to you when you hear that word?
Nonsense, specificity, I guess. Clarity. What else? Nuances of life. Importance.
Hmm.
I think that's a synonym. I don't know. So yeah, that's what.
Definitely, definitely. The third word is learning.
Learning, evolving, uh, open-minded, acceptance.
Hmm. Awesome. The fourth word is empathy. What are the things that sort of call out to you when I say that word?
Understanding. I think I've said. I haven't. Understanding, empathy, uh, understanding, giving. What else? Empathy. I guess emotional values. Basically, emotional values. Yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful. And the last word for this segment of Bish Bash Posh is similarities.
Similarities. Similarities. I don't know. Similarities everywhere. What else can I say? Well, if I have to put it in a way that, okay, similar competitiveness. Many things are similar. There's obviously competition. Then there's similarity, competitiveness, cutthroat, maybe cutthroat. Is, there's also jubilance. two things are similar. You have people saying things are similar. So yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah, I don't think we've got jubilance as a word, but that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for playing along on this segment of Pish Pash Posh, bro.
my pleasure.
Appreciate it a lot. Yeah, just two more questions before we're done. First one is, how do you relate to people
You mean emotionally or like people
in
in
any
general?
context, whichever context you choose to explore that question?
Uh, People other than my relation, I guess. How do I say it? I don't know if it's quite practical. You understand? There's a immediate connection between your vibes. That irrespective of your age, I don't necessarily be friends with people of my age. I've got friends that are quite old, quite young too. So there's that immediate connection with the people, and then friendship or anything for that matter takes time. But that instant click, you get that, you feel that emotionally, you feel it in your heart. the, I feel that the person talking to me feels that. When you feel that happens, I think it's relatable. That's how I relate to people. There's that instant connection. uh, that's how it is.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And
And
for the last
also,
question,
yeah,
which is not really a question. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I actually wanted to add, I've also realized that the simpler you keep things, the easier it gets. So
Hmm.
you complicate. We humans have this tendency to overcomplicate things. When that happens, nothing goes your way. So keep things simple, things will happen. I just wanted to add that. I don't know if it's any relative to what you were going to ask.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay because I think you answered the question that I was going to ask you by saying that, but I'll ask you for to say something else then, because basically my question or request is going to be for you to leave the listeners and the watchers with something that keeps you motivated, keeps you going, or just a positive thought in general. Something that you think you haven't shared yet that you'd like to share.
I'm sure, from being okay, I'll talk about from a musician's aspect. Like you mentioned, musicians keep on evolving. So when they don't make a certain kind of music of your liking, or there's been that certain attachment to it, just give them that. Go. Just they're good musicians too. They have some great songs back then. So there must be a reason that they're famous, right? Just because they're doing some other songs, other genres, or trying other stuffs. Everybody tries different stuffs in life. Nobody can stick to one thing, simple thing. So when that happens, there's backlashes. As a musician, it really hurts them on a very emotional level. So don't do that. Accept any. The music might be bad, yeah, but accept the musician. Accept things do change. Nothing is constant, and that's a very important thing. Nothing stays constant. Everything evolves. Everything changes eventually. So accept that, and it doesn't have to be like I mentioned. This was a musician was an instant. Anybody for that example. People keep changing. You'll have to accept that fact and move on with it. So I think that's what I wanted to say to our viewers.
That's a beautiful note to close off on because it's something that we definitely need to think about, right? Because we don't necessarily think about where that person might be coming from. Like this musician might choose to do this because it sparked a certain emotion in them. So there's many different things that we're not aware of as to why a musician or anybody chose to do something, be it different or similar to what they usually do. So like show grace and accept that, and that's a beautiful note to close off on. So thank you so much, bro, for sharing everything that you did today. I
No,
appreciate you
well,
taking the time to do
it's
this.
been my absolute pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you once
having
again.
me.
And for everybody who's listening and watching, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks. Cheers.